Do some chatter?
Chicken, barbecue wings, baked potatoes, and biscuits.
Oh, biscuits.
We could just do 2 hours of this. Yeah, man, thanks for coming out. Have you been here before? But thanks again for joining us.
Of course, thank you all for
So
having me.
shades, how come you have shades on because your allergies are that bad?
I've found out a few years ago that I am allergic to grass. And not even a little allergic to grass. Like they did the 16 pricks on the arm,
Yeah,
supposed to wait
test. Yeah.
15 minutes, right, and see what. After 2.5 minutes, they ended the test because grass was like that big.
Oh, nasty.
They like to the point they're like, yeah, obviously it's very, very. I was like, no wonder. Whether I was in New York, Kansas, Tech, like wherever I've lived, I've always had allergies. I'm like, oh yeah, well grass is fucking everywhere. Like,
It should have been better in New York, right? Urban.
it was a little better, but New York is full of mold, right? And a lot of mold, a lot of that stuff in those old apartments, all those spores and things like that. New York was probably one of the worst places. I was like, why is New York bad? I thought the same thing. I was like, shouldn't I be fantastic here? No.
It's the hot and humidity also doesn't help any health issues. I feel like
Nope.
it's nasty.
So you can just live in the desert? Like, is that the best place for you to live?
Desert is supposed to be the best. Unfortunately, I'm black. And with that comes dry skin, and me and dry skin don't do well, and so the amounts of a lotion that I would need to keep to be in the desert, I don't think are cost effective.
It doesn't go cost effective.
Yeah, I think you go with the lower rent, right? But the offset would be I really have to stay lotioned up.
Right.
Or you
let's
can
do
get a vino to sponsor your shows, and then
boom,
you go.
then I'm good.
That might be the first person to be sponsored by lotion then.
Yeah, why not?
First comedian sponsored by lotion.
See, I'm trying to be a first. There we go, right there. I need to find these new avenues. Avino, holler at me.
So we first met you at your special, which was phenomenal to be a part of and to see. And in addition to it being a really good show, just to be part of the spectacle and get there a little bit early was really fascinating to see. And obviously, we're somewhat interested in this kind of realm. How nervous were you leading up to the show?
Well, one, thank you for being there, and of course being there early and seeing all the stuff. Right, that was actually fun for me too, to see the cameras getting set up and all the craziness that goes into like the Hollywood magic. Right, It's like, oh man, this show looks great. Yeah, well, there's cameras flying and there's people hiding in the curtains behind the scenes, and
It's like 15 people there.
right, and just running around doing all these things. It was a crazy experience. I quit my job a year ago in May. Palo Alto job, tech sales, and started my own production company. I'd been doing comedy for 9 years, and that alone was enough stress, to branch out on your own and say, screw it, and screw you, six figures. I'm going to go be funny.
Right.
And got some investors, some ups and downs throughout the year. But then in January, we finally got all of our financing. And as soon as we got all of our money, we said, great, how fast can we shoot this thing? And the director was like, literally the day after I got financing, signed paperwork, found the director and team. And by the next weekend, we were looking at venues. And within a week, he was like, okay, let's shoot March 27th.
Wow.
I was like, okay, great. I have 65 days to put together an hour-long show that I haven't practiced, performed, or got ready for. But he was ready to shoot, and we'd been trying to get all this stuff done this entire time. And then to get to that part, I would say from January 12th until the night you all saw me was the most stressful time of my life. Anyone that thinks producing is easy or ever tells you that producing is easy is a liar. It was, and this is just for a handful of people for a comedy special, but herding the goats, right? Getting the director, getting the entire crew, deciding what you're going to shoot it at, getting the venue, the hair and makeup people, the sound people, the sound engineers. Got to have a DJ for the after. There's so much marketing and advertising before the show. I just wanted to perform. Where's the part where I tell jokes?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the day of the show, it was interesting. I was a very cocky kid growing up. I was very good at sports, and so that kind of gave me a uber confidence as a kid. So a lot of people remember me as that person back home when I left at 17. 17 years later, I'm a completely different person, but they don't know that. So the day of the show, I get people like my dad and family members and friends back home who are calling me, congratulating me, hey, good luck, crush it tonight. And my little brother tells my dad, he goes, you know, Preston's nervous as hell, right? And my dad's like, what? Preston doesn't get nervous. What? He never has gotten nervous. So my dad calls me back, and he asks, he's like, yeah, are you nervous? I was like, yeah, Dad, I've been sitting on this damn bridge next to this hotel room for like 3 hours today. I'm nervous as hell. I've been running over the show. I haven't even gone back in my hotel room. I need to take a shower. I was terrified the entire day that I was going to get up there and stumble throughout the show.
Right.
And part of it is, you know, you just spent $60,000, $70,000 and we have one shot.
Yeah, that's crazy. And just before we started, you were talking about that if you have the funds, you try and do multiples,
Yeah,
right?
every comedian will tell you. I mean, look at Dave Chappelle's recent specials he's won awards for when he's at the Palladium in Hollywood. Notice how many times the crowd changes in the front row.
Right.
It's at least 3 times. And most of his shows, you'll notice they're cutting from about 2 or 3 shows. As that goes with every comedian, you typically shoot, you know, a 7 o'clock and a 9 o'clock show. Or you shoot one show one night and then you shoot another show the next night. That way you have a couple of cuts and takes to pull from, different energy from the crowds, things like that. So the idea to, you know, think you're going to go knock it out of the park one time straight through is pretty crazy.
Right.
And on top of that, if you are going to do what we did, you typically cut periodically so that you can pick up in spots or maybe pick up a joke or if you lost sound or something. But our whole idea and the whole project for me was, screw it, listen, we're going to go 65 minutes straight through and,
Raw.
you know, I'm just not going to mess up.
Yeah.
That was the hope, at least, right? So, yeah, it was crazy. It was 1970s, 1980s style, right, where you would go in and lay down your hour and 20 minutes and hope for the best.
I mean, that's the most honest thing. There's a few specials I've seen where when it's not cut together well, you can tell that wardrobe changes and it's super distracting.
Yes.
I mean, really, really big errors, like a collar that's popped and then it's not popped.
Yes.
It's like, all right, well, this is clearly a hoax in a way.
Yes.
You know? So.
Well, one of the things that I love Dave to death. He's one of the people that I've really learned from and took the craft from and kind of model some of myself after. But there's this lady in this green outfit, and it's so distinct that she's in one shot and she's not in the next. And I was like, who was the person that was set the choreograph and line those people up each night? Because she's dead centered in half the shots, and then she's gone in half the shots. And you're like, oh, he's completely at different shows.
Yeah.
Right? Different shows, different times. And it's like, yeah, could you have not have just neutral colors. Don't have the person in bright pink front row center, and then all of a sudden it's a huge dude from Hungary or that's exactly what it looked like. And I was like, wow, for me, part of it too was it takes a little bit away to me.
Of course.
And I was like, no, I want you to see what this process looks like one night through. And that's what a big selling point I think we're going to have when we're pushing it out there too. Is like, no, this was literally a one night, one show only. Brandon mentioned earlier, a good friend there, that a lot of people go on tour first, right? Hey, I'm going to go tour for a year. Hey, I'm going to do 20, 30 cities really quickly, and then we'll shoot it at the end. It's like, yeah, I performed this about 30, 40 times in the backyard, between a couple of sunflowers and some friends. But other than that, it had never been performed before.
Wait, but never before at a live? Seriously?
That was the only time that show has ever been performed, and probably the only time it will be. It was balls. It was crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
It took a lot of trust in the crew. It took a lot of trust in my investors to go, okay, so you mean to tell me no one knows you, and no one's seen you do a full hour? I haven't done a full hour probably in 8 years now. So no one really knew what was coming. No one knew what to expect or what the story was going to be. People have seen parts of the show that were built out over the years, but as the most comics out here know, you get 5 minutes here, 7 minutes there, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes if you're lucky and know somebody. And that even goes for a lot of the big guys, going into the improvs, popping in things. It's just hard to find an hour or an hour and a half out here where someone's going to let you run with material.
Right. Right, that's true. It's not like you can just do whatever you want. You need a venue, you need people, you need...
Exactly. So, I just decided to bypass all of that, because what logic does that need? What do I... It was a crazy idea. It takes, a lot of trust in the crew and the people that are going to capture the shot, which I think Steve and those guys did amazing. It takes a lot of trust in the material, and it takes someone that's willing to come over and listen to your show relentlessly every day and probably start to hate you. There'll be a special thanks on the show, but thanks, Angelica, for being there every single day, because there's a woman that was there in the show that was in the front row that literally every night after work, she came over and it was time to run the show, time to run the show, time to run the show. So I'm sure she probably heard that thing 40, 50 times and was so tired of hearing it by that night.
So she was your backup female in case you were sick that day.
Right.
She could take over on stage, basically.
She probably could have ran the show herself had I not been there. She has heard it that many times over. So.
I mean, some of the jokes probably would not have made sense coming from her. But
That, this is true. I don't understand how she would have rolled out her BBC to that HBO special. That would have been interesting to watch. And one thing that was really unique was the day of the show, like when I met you all at the show. Geez, I'm horrible right now. Does anybody have a napkin or a paper towel? You can see the allergies like running out of my eyes at the moment.
oh man,
I think there is
But-
napkins in there.
you know what it is? It's because of all the rain we got this year.
Well, no, they talked about the awesome bloom we had, which was great for most people.
For most people, yeah.
The aspect, right? You hear about all the specials and you hear about all these things that take place and dressing rooms, and so of course I had this vision of what my dressing room was going to look like and my free time before the show and how I was going to break down everything, because that's what happens, right? You get there, you practice 20, 30 minutes beforehand. I was busy helping produce, get people in order, right? I had the opening comics, making sure that everything was in place for them, making sure everything looked good on camera behind the set. I didn't even get my tie, like the suit ready that I had on, until I think they said I had 90 seconds. And then the makeup lady quickly brushed the top of my forehead to make sure I wasn't shiny. And then when I was down to about 60 seconds left, I got my moment to like stand in the mirror and like take a breath and go, all right, you ready to do this?
Right.
And in that moment I was like, where the hell did my 30 minutes go? Like, where did my sit down, decompress, relax, get ready for this thing? It was like, no, hustle bustle, hey, go get on stage and tell jokes.
So you were mentioned before that you were in Silicon Valley, right?
Yes.
And then I did not realize. So wait, how long were you there? And you were in this tech sales or something?
Yeah, I got there, let's see, I moved here the summer of 2008, and I left here December of 2014. So I had been here just over 6 years, got a nice job offer in the Silicon Valley, Palo Alto area. And I was like, yeah, it's really, hard to say no to, a six-figure job when you're bartending and telling jokes in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And it just made logical sense at the time. I was like, you know what, this will be a great experience to go learn business inside and out, kind of understand where you can draw value. And I thought it would be a good idea to give me different perspective when I came back to entertainment. So the plan was always come back.
Right. So when you first moved to California, it was LA to do what you wanted to do.
Oh, yeah.
And then you went up north for how long?
I ended up staying there about 2.5 years.
2.5 years, and then you came back down only a year ago. Right?
Yeah. The whole plan for me was go up 3 years, see how much money I could make and extract from that place, and then come back here and actually do what I wanted to.
Yeah, that's not a bad plan. So when you were up there working full time, did you still continue entertaining and doing comedy?
I tried.
Yeah.
The first year was okay. What most people don't realize, there is some comedy up in the Bay Area, but it's nothing like LA. Yeah. Because here people are really pushing and stretching and striving for that. Where there it's just too expensive. If you're not making, $150,000, $200,000, it's really hard to survive in the Bay. Mm-hmm. Much less try to be an artist. Like, you can't really shack up with 3 or 4 people in an apartment or a house like you can here and get by, $500, $600, $700. Same idea there is going to cost you $1,200, $1,300, $1,400.
Yeah.
Well, that's a little bit steeper, right? Now you're talking about I need to pay double or triple what I pay down here, to be a starving artist.
Yeah.
So you don't have a lot of venues that are doing that. You don't have a lot of people. The peninsula's sleepy too. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that unless you're really in San Francisco or in San Jose, the Silicon Valley in between goes to bed at like 9:30.
That's true. There's not much out there.
No, there really isn't. So it's like hustling and bustling right after work, and people are drinking and they're having dinner. But come 9:30, it's like ghost town.
Yeah.
Everyone's gone to bed because they're getting back up to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it was hard to really stay on my game there without having to drive, an hour or 2 hours away to perform all the time. So it really became what I did for this show, which was performing on my own, putting little shows together on my own, getting my own practice in those years while I was there. And then when I would come back to LA from time to time, I would perform just because it was so easy to perform when I was here.
Right. So the times that you did perform at venues up north in that area, did you get a sense that the audience was different?
Yes. One thing you notice about just anywhere performing in different states and areas, the audiences are so different. What I know works here in Los Angeles works just about anywhere from here to Orange County pretty easily. It shifts once you start getting to the middle of California because it's a different style of people. I used to perform up around Pismo Beach in that area a lot in Morro Bay, and it's a different crowd. What works here does not work there. You got an older population, a retired population.
Yeah, probably a little more conservative.
Exactly. So, you have to rein in, probably the last half of the show that I did, right? Like you can't, so you have to know your audience. One thing I say about that area in the peninsula, they're pretty good. That area is pretty good about being open. You get some of those comics around here like to really push the envelope kind of with the dirtiness and the nastiness, right, to really see how far. No one really does any of that there. It's very much, like you said, a little more conservative, a little more reserved. So even my nice stuff was still kind of edgy for that area, but it was just on the fringe enough that you could get the laughs.
Right.
I think part of that is because there's also probably no other black people up there telling jokes. Like I'm already a unicorn in the tech industry, like, selling software. And so now is also telling jokes in a suit. Like none of it made sense for the Silicon Valley, which was part of my plan.
Sure. So, but the tech job, was that because of what you studied in school?
No, I actually studied science and chemistry in school and
Really?
Made no sense. I wanted to be a pediatrician when I finished school. I wanted to be a doctor. I love kids and helping kids. And I got tired of school. I was so tired of school. And I was like, wait, now I have to go to med school? I do not want to go to med school. Can I just graduate? What can I do to graduate? And at the time, Brandon and I, we fell in love with the show Entourage. And I watched way too much Entourage. And I was like, you know what? I think that's what I want to do now. I'm gonna move to Los Angeles and be Vinny Chase. I ended up having, as I mentioned in the show, a bit of a wild lifestyle. And so I've been fortunate to meet a lot of crazy cool people. And one of those guys happened to, at the time, own a Fortune, what I'd call it a Fortune 150 company, a pretty large company on a global scale. And had just invested in a new company and thought, hey, I'd be a great salesman. He was like, he goes, if you can talk this easily with me, and one, I didn't know who the hell he was. It's kind of funny. He assumed that I just, knew who he was. I was like, yeah.
Of course he did.
Yeah, right. Well, of course, right. What other CEO? All the CEOs of Silicon Valley, they all think they're important. It's great. I was like, sure. So he was like, well, if you're this comfortable with me, good Lord, you'll probably do great as a salesman, in all these offices. He was right, by the way. Which it made sense. Selling millions of dollars worth of software is just about relationships and being able to talk to people. And it's way easier than comedy. The transition was seamless because you're taking me off of a stage where I might perform for 100 or 1,000 people, and I can, like I said, I can do up to an hour and a half of material without a problem. Now you want me to go into a tech company and memorize 10 minutes or 12-minute spiel of software information? Sure, it took me 2 days to memorize it. I don't even know what any of it fucking means. Right? I just need to be able to regurgitate it when I walk into a C-suite.
Yeah.
And now my audience, instead of 100 people, is 7 idiots in suits.
Cool. Super focused audience.
Yeah, so it's easy. It's fine because now my performance, I don't even have to try to make you laugh. I just have to make you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
And then sell it to you. I was like, dude, this is so easy. I already work our performance suits anyway.
Right.
So now I'm just changing the microphone and for a whiteboard and a PowerPoint.
Right.
And like he was correct. He was like, yeah, your confidence in those rooms changes everything because a lot of people go into those rooms scared or not sure of themselves. I was like, well, I don't care. It's just about knowing the material. That takes no time.
Yeah.
So it was a successful 2.5 years and allowed me to move here after 2.5 years, and I stayed remote. So I was actually working for another year with my Silicon Valley salary back here, that helped me for a year
Nice.
get back on the road, start performing a lot more down here. So basically, it was like a whole year of free time to work remotely, right? Get the job done during the day, get out at night, perform to where when I quit last year, I felt confident that, hey, I'm ready to get this thing done and out there.
Well, that's a very smooth transition. I can't imagine it works out so well for many other people, but you seem to have this this kind of planned out in a way? Like you thought about it a bit.
It was planned out when I left. I was looking back after we finished the show, and I thought to myself, how crazy! Like my 5-year plan 5 years ago in 2014 when I left was to go there, work for 3 years, make enough money, come back, shoot my comedy special.
Right.
There's a lot of bumps, ups and downs, bumps and bruises, right? You're happy, you're sad, there's some depression in there, times get tough, hard. But at the end of the day, looking back, I was like, wow, I actually did exactly what I said I was going to do in 5 years. That's crazy.
That's really crazy.
It's crazy. Because like, I don't think a lot of people look back at their 5-year plans and actually really assess when they've gotten through it or done it or stay on track sometimes. Yeah. And to look back, it actually baffles me sometimes to go, okay, I've done it. Now the question is, all right, well, what's next? You know, I didn't create another plan after the 5-year plan.
Do you have a 10-year plan?
No, right? So I was like, well, crap, now I have to start a new 5-year plan. So that's been my goal here the last couple of months is like, all right, well, now I have to figure out what's next.
So when you transitioned from Texas,
Yes,
right, to LA, how rough of a training? Did you have any training in comedy or stand-up or public speaking or anything like that, or you just dove into it?
I hated public speaking. It's still hilarious. I'll never forget the first time I told my mom that I was doing stand-up comedy here in LA, which was in 2010. And it was that summer, that June. And I'll never forget, I said, Mom, I'm going to go up tonight and I'm doing stand-up. And she goes, that's hilarious because you don't talk. And she was right. Like, for most of my life, I had visualized a lot of stuff and I was very observant. I just watched things. And when we would go to my grandmother's house that was 2.5 hours away, if it was just me in the car, my mom hated it because I wouldn't talk. After the first 5 minutes, it was over, and that was 2 hours of silence. So the fact that, you know, I suddenly get to Los Angeles and now I'm telling jokes on stage, my mom was like, who is this and where's my son? And it really came in 2007. I was writing jokes at Kansas before I left college, but I hated public speaking still. I was not getting on stage. It took moving to New York for 3 months in 2010. I was doing some runway modeling at the time. And those 2.5, 3 months living in New York changed me. I hated the city. I treat New York like Vegas. I tell people I can do 2 or 3 days hard there, but then I got to leave, right? Because to me, New York is way harder than Vegas. Like, Vegas is cute as an adult playground.
Right.
New York, you're really not going to sleep. Like, not with the people I know. They don't sleep. They finish partying. They have, you know, a quick brunch there, whatever's open late, and then they go back to work at 7:30 in the morning. And then they do it all over again the next day.
It wears on you.
Yes, and I was
age quickly.
No, and I was not ready for New York after living out here. And one thing I've noticed, though, the subways, the walking along the streets where everyone's at, there's people playing violins in the subway. There's people selling watches and jewelry. There's homeless people performing comedy on the subways. Like, so much is going on. People are bumping into each other on the streets, right? And, hey, fuck you, whatever, have a great day, you too, all right. Like, seeing all of that commotion was like, no one cares. That's what it really taught me. It taught me that no one cares. Whether you're walking along the sidewalks, whether you're in the subways, no one cares. Either they're going to pay attention to you a little bit or they're not.
Yeah.
They're either going to zone out and give you some attention or they're not. So just do what the hell you want to do anyway. And I don't know why New York did that to me, but it did. So
Interesting.
I moved back here a month later, June of 2010, and probably within a week of being back, I started performing. And just took off. First show was at the Palm in West Hollywood. The second show was downtown with comedy legend Garrett Morris, which is crazy. I still have video of him, and he's asking me how long I've been doing comedy. And I was like, since yesterday. And he was like, wait, seriously? And I was like, yeah, 100%. He goes, oh, you're going to be all right, kid. And he was like, this is your second show? And then my third show, which was 2 weeks later, was actually in San Francisco. So I flew up to San Francisco, performed there, and yeah, the rest is history. I just got on the road then. I started getting paid within 6 months, which most comics thought I was nuts. Because I knew guys that had been going at it 6, 7, 8 years and had never gotten paid, and they're like, seriously, dude, 6 months and you're on the road? I was like, yeah, they really were hating. I was like, but my thing was those 5 to 7 minutes I told you comics get saddled into. Right? They're so used to 5 and 7 minutes everywhere they've gone that none of them actually expanded past that. Even though they've been doing comedy 5, 6, 7 years, most of them hadn't done more than 10 minutes of comedy. Well, in those 6 months, I rarely performed the same show. If you gave me a new 5 minutes in a new venue, I was trying to give you a whole new 5 minutes of material. So over time, I had worked 20, 30, 40 minutes of material within 6 months, where most of these guys don't even have 20, 30, 40 minutes of material.
Right.
So I was like, well, screw it. I got a half hour now. I can go on the road. And so I did. Started calling venues, sending my information out, and suddenly you're on the road. And then, yeah, I never turned back other than, I took that break to go to Silicon Valley because the money was just too nice.
It makes sense. Do you think, though, that the kind of difference in strategy or approaching the 5-minute set has something to do with, fear? I mean, I would imagine if you find 5 minutes that work really well, then why not just do it over and over again?
So I won't say it's easy, but that first 5 to 7 minutes, typically you're so confident in it, and you've worked it so many times in so many venues, you know it well. One of the first experiences I had on the road, and a good comic friend taught me this, I would take 2 openers like you're supposed to, right? And, we want to put together an hour-and-a-half show. So, hey, you hit 15 minutes, you hit 15 minutes, I'll do an hour. The first 3 trips out of town, my openers kept canceling. Day of, just would cancel. And I never knew what was going on. And finally, one of my older comics said, the guys are scared that they don't have 15 minutes. I was like, wait, what? I was like, but they're getting paid. They asked me to come. Like, why are they? Well, he goes, they're getting scared because they've only done the 5 to 7 minutes. And it is a thing where it's a comfort level. You've done 5 to 7 so many times, and for a year or 2 years now, that it's what you know. Telling someone to go up there and now double the time you've been up there really starts to mess with a lot of people, especially if they haven't practiced it. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, a lot of people get in their head about expectations because they think if somebody's at a certain level, they need to be at a certain level.
Sure.
And it's like, no, dude, you just need to be funny for you. One thing you'll learn, though, it's kind of like the comedy competitions you've seen on TV, I'm sure. You've seen some B-level stars, like people you've seen on shows and people that are big comics that have toured before. And you're like, well, why are you on this show?
Right.
5 minutes or 3 minutes is a completely different style of comedy than storytelling for 60 minutes or 65 minutes. What you guys saw me perform that night was storytelling for 65 minutes.
Right.
If you told me I had 10 minutes, most of those jokes you heard, I can get into a 10-minute show. But when you're talking 10 minutes, it should be rapid fire, right? Yeah. Because I need to catch your attention. I need to give you all of my stuff now. So if you tell me tonight I have a 5-7 minute show, I'm giving you all the 30-second and 45-second jokes I can handle. Just boom, 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 punchline, punchline, punchline. Now if you tell me I have 25 minutes, great. Now I'm going to tell you 3 stories.
Interesting.
Right.
Do you prefer one time frame versus another?
It depends on the crowd. If you have a large audience or a large crowd, it's fun to go into storytelling mode because you have so much energy in the room and you can feed off that crowd and that energy. Though one of my favorite comedy experiences of all time, I was in the audience for, and it was Chris D'Elia, and we're at the Comedy Store, and there might be 4 of us in the audience, and 3 of them is me and 2 of my friends, and then some random dude that's in the back. And how do you keep your energy up as a comic to perform for 4 people? Especially when you have a show on TV at the moment, you have 2 specials in, and at the moment you're the early person up and there's 4 people in the crowd. I've never laughed so hard in my life. He was so focused and so good at making 4 people laugh. Like, people don't understand how hard that's way harder, right? So if I have a small crowd or a small audience, I don't have time to tell stories, right? It's 4 people. I need them laughing now, and I need them laughing often. So I'm going to give you rapid fire everything. If I'm going to be in a big show, big stage, where I got 500,000 people there, well, great. I can take my sweet time, let the story build, because now I want to give everybody in the audience imagery, right? I want to build up that joke a bit so that when I do nail it, boom, now I can get the energy of 500 people laughing.
Right. It's super interesting to me, the dynamics of having to do stand-up, and the fact also that it's so risky because it's live, it's right there, and the only performance background I have is that I played trumpet through college, which I was okay, and so we perform in cathedrals and churches around all over the place, and some really big venues. And there's a weird thing that happens on stage. If you're a soloist, that's like one thing. But if you're part of a big ensemble, there's a weird moment that happens where if you're all performing and someone gets off the beat, and then the next person gets off the beat, within a couple seconds, it'll go across the entire group. If you're not legit and like together, you don't have a conductor that kind of bring everyone in.
Right.
It'll go across the entire group like a cold wind, and this fear just spreads. And it's like, it's palpable how strong that is and how quickly it happens.
Yes.
So in the case of an ensemble, that's where you need like a really good conductor to kind of like rein it back in.
Right.
But so I would imagine, but that fear element that I think can come into play so quickly is something that makes stand-up comedy so interesting, because you could be on fire and it just takes one minor hiccup, and if you let that side of you come in, that fear, it could easily just lead to a downfall.
Oh, it's a train wreck. Because that voice is in your head the whole show. It was in my head the whole show. It's my first special. Am I doing well? Did I miss something? Right? All those things are running through your head, and to stay on cue, whether the joke hit or not, is one of the hardest things to do, because like you said, then that fear creeps in like, oh man, I just killed it with the other three and they didn't like that one. Oh, well, crap, what if they don't like the next one? Or you'll find those people that start stumbling, right? They'll start tripping over their words. They'll start reaching. It's hard. It kind of like boxing. It's a sweet science, because you really do have to stay in that moment with the crowd, because if that energy does shift, if you do have that one joke that doesn't hit, you feel that energy just like the crowd felt that energy of like, oh, that wasn't that good. Well, great, but I can't show you that I felt that even though you did. I have to keep my energy up and make sure I get from that piece to the next joke so that I can bring that crowd level back up. If I let them see me break, they know something's wrong. Right now, they don't know anything is wrong. But that's a hard thing to teach yourself, right? Because we want to listen to that storyteller, right? Holy crap, I suck. This isn't going well. And if you do, like you said, it's an effect. If I feel that and you see it on stage, well, now you know I'm not confident in my next couple of jokes coming. So now what is going to give you the incentive to laugh if I'm not confident and I'm not excited for it? Why would you be?
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I guess you have to be hyper in tune with the audience, but at the same time, be your own person at own level in case things don't go right or whatever it might be.
Yes.
How much writing does it take you to prepare a show? Like, do you write down everything and try to like work on the transition and like which jokes comes first and where you start, where you end, or is it mostly like, I don't know, just bullet point notes of the jokes and everything else is in your head kind of thing?
It's interesting you say that, because the first time I did this years ago, the first hour I did, I wrote every single word down, every single time, over and over. Just a huge spiral of everything that was going to be said, and then I read from that. This time, the show was probably ready 15 days before the show. And then it kept changing every single day until about 2 days before the show. But this time around, it was more bullet points than it was actually writing out. Because at this point, like I said, I performed a lot of these jokes for the last 7, 8, 9 years. So they're in there. It was just wrapping the story around them. So it was really nice to just have bullet points. Now going back for show 2, I'm planning on hitting another tour, whenever I get signed on to. Will be a lot more back to writing. I'm very old school. Like, I break out a stopwatch and literally I write everything out. I work on my timing. I work on the transitions. Once I'm comfortable with it, or I've performed it for 6, 7, 8 months, I'll just need bullet points whenever I go somewhere.
And then, so do you know, can you kind of guess the type of audience you're going to have?
Yes.
Because I'm assuming you have to tailor some of those jokes
Every time.
right?
That's
or have a safety backup if the first one didn't go well. Like, okay, let's just.
I tell people this, and the 10 years, 11 years that I've been doing this now, every show I've ever done has never gone the way I practiced it. Not one. Not a 3-minute show, not a 5-minute show, not a 7-minute. Not one show has ever gone the way I practice. And that's because you never know your crowd. I'll get to a venue, I'll get to a show, one comic bounces up before you, maybe 2 guys go up before you. You start getting a feel for what worked for them and what didn't work. And if the audiences get groaning at something that they really didn't like it, why would you possibly go up there and tell the same style of joke, right? So I've had shows where 5, 7 minutes I've gone up and someone's either told half or 2 or 3 jokes that are similar to mine, or the style of jokes in a certain genre, and none of them hit. Well, great. Now I need to replace 4 of the 5 minutes that I was going to do. Oh, by the way, you're going up next. That's where it plays in to have all the stories, to have the backup, so that if I have a show where, I'm only going in to do 5, 7, 10 minutes, I typically almost have another 5, 7, 10 minutes ready behind that.
Right.
So that, all right, great. If someone takes half of my jokes or if the crowd's not feeling it, I have audibles.
Have you ever had to go on stage and completely improvise and not have anything backed up?
I've done it to myself.
Done yourself.
Just as practice, I've done it about 3 or 4 times, and a lot of comics will tell you to try it just to see. So I've done it maybe 2 or 3 times at like an open mic or something where literally I'll just grab the microphone and see what would come out.
Right.
And you find out quickly. You have an arsenal. You have, for instance, when you're doing something like that, you play off of the host. You play off of 2 or 3 of the last jokes from the people that went up, right? That maybe you have something that's relatable. And then you just go into whatever comes out, whatever flows. Sometimes I'll try new stuff. Sometimes I'll mix it in with old stuff. Sometimes I'll just do crowd work just to see, how the night's going. But those are the best nights because you really find out what you have. And you really find out if you're funny. I mean, because if you can walk up there and grab a mic with nothing prepared and make people laugh for 5 minutes, that's a lot harder than people think it is.
Oh, yeah, that sounds extremely difficult. And I think also maybe there's a perception amongst the general public or consumers of comedy that it looks easy. So, and I'm pretty funny amongst my friends,
Right.
so I could do it.
Oh, you see that train wreck a lot.
I'm one of these people.
Even on tour, I stopped at a couple of places and I was just doing open mics because I love open mics. And I mean, there's great jokes everywhere, from every level, from beginners to some of the best guys out there. You see some of the funniest jokes that they have no clue how to deliver. Like, I'll be laughing so hard in the background while no one else in the crowd's laughing because I know how funny it is that they just say it.
You're replaying it in your mind how it should go.
Yeah, I was like, just because they don't know how to deliver it, I was like, they have a gym. When I see stuff like that, I'll go and I'll tell them, hey, fantastic set. I'll give them a lot of positivity and then, just a little feedback. Hey, if you tweak this or just deliver it like this or slow down your delivery, that joke will pop, And it's kind of cool to see that where sometimes you'll go up the next day, they'll go deliver it again and then boom, they nail it. And they're like, oh, I was like, dude, it's such a sweet science. You could I tell people this, go and take a transcript from a Dave Chappelle special and then try to go stand on stage and see if you can be just as funny.
Right.
You'll sound like a dude that's just saying words.
Right.
Right. But suddenly the way Dave delivers it with his mannerisms and the way he looks into the camera, you're laughing. And it really takes a special talent or, a special energy to know that you have that. And then you see some train wrecks. You see some people that, like you said, they're funny with their friends. They told him, hey, Josh, you're killing it over here. You got the zingers, man. You should get on stage. Then Josh gets on stage, and it is the roughest 5 minutes you've ever seen. You're like, why didn't you just stop after 2? Just put the mic back in the stand, and just, no one's going to judge you. But no, you stand there for 3 more minutes of agony while everyone watches you go, no, I got something for you.
People are that bad sometimes?
Oh, I've literally watched an for 4 minutes happen before.
What?
For 4 minutes. You'd think after a minute or 2, you'd be like, you know what, guys, I just don't have it.
It becomes a yoga class at the end.
Exactly. 4 minutes. I was like, wow, I'll never forget that guy. I saw him again at his normal job. I don't want to say what his normal job was because then it might throw out there who the individual was. But it was not good. And you get a lot of that. You get a lot of the people that their friends are funny, or it's not the case. Then people ask about classes, right? Hey, well, what do you, did you take classes? How did you? It's like, no, I got on stage. I was like, I learned from watching Dangerfield and watching Eddie and watching Carlin, and watching Dave. I was like, that's where I learned. And then just life, like practicing. But it was like, one thing, it's weird if you're funny with just your group of friends. It's important to learn, like, I learned at a young age, I was funny at school or at high school, like with the zingers, like quietly, like just one a day, never trying to actually be funny. But in the right moment, if it's super funny, okay, I'll say it. Same thing in college, but that's a new group of people. I was like, okay, it works here. Same when I got new friends in Los Angeles. I was like, okay, if it's funny in Texas, if it's funny in Kansas, if it's funny with the people out here in LA, all right, now I'm getting a sense maybe it's funny with everyone, right? But a lot of these people don't have that type of sense. They just go, oh, my friends think it's funny, so we're good.
Yeah. I can see why that wouldn't work. And also, it's if depending on how you're delivering your punchlines in your group of friends, if you're naturally gifted at knowing when good timing is, that's not the same thing as going up on stage in silence and producing all of the content.
There we go.
Like, you can step in and make a funny comment in response to things because the environment's set. But if it's like just dead silent in a flat stage and that's empty, I don't know. That's a different ballgame.
And that's why I tell people when they get in those spots, I say, listen, you're going to be probably great at improv. Comedy probably wasn't the right move, right? Because some of those people, you're great with timing. You're great, right, with zingers in a set moment. You got a set atmosphere when it comes to improv, right? You got people to feed off of that are going to be throwing you up, tossing you up balls to dunk and slam all day. You'll probably be good at improv. Go to Second City or something like that. Take some classes. Stand-up is not that. You have to get on stage on a flat surface and create content. Creating content is not, like you said, people look, there's so many specials out now, right? Netflix has made it look like you can just stand up anywhere and go tell jokes.
Right.
And I mean, I have friends even from back home that, they're getting on Facebook, hey, I'm telling comedy over here at this place this weekend or this place. And then, I don't respond to it, but I just watch and I just look to see what it's like. And I'm like, yeah, they're going through those growing pains. You can tell they're those friends that someone's like, yeah, go up, you can do it too.
Sure.
No, you can't. I love you to death. I'm glad you're trying, by the way. I'll never tell them don't try, right?
Sure.
Go and do. But it's just know that it's not easy.
But do you think it's in the end it's something? I mean, there are those who are naturally talented from the get-go. But do you think it's possible to have it be purely a learned skill, or does something have to be there from the very beginning?
That's a very tough one. Because I coach kids in track and field. That's my side job. So I still fly up to the Silicon Valley monthly and train 6, 7, 8 kids from the ages of 10 to 14, right? And the reason I love doing it is because I get to go down and break down their form and teach them how to actually run properly and push off their feet properly and how to use your arms properly. So in other words, I can break down their form completely, and then within 6 months, you can see a complete change in that person, right? Because I have a skill set that a lot of people don't have when it comes to running at a high level. I think that if you have someone at a high level, and I don't know if I would put myself in those categories as of yet, but someone like a Rock or a Dave or a Seinfeld, who this is their art, right? I'm no Seinfeld as a scientist with this types of stuff that if he sat down with you as a raw comic and explained to you setup and punches and really went through and kind of taught the intricacies of the things I was talking about earlier, understanding your crowd, understanding when do I need to speed jokes up and do fast stuff versus when can I slow down and tell story mode. When can I act like an idiot and do, hand movements and gestures on stage versus when do I just stay still and let the words be funny. If you have a master at the craft, someone that has that eye, I think it can help you along the way, but you still need, I think, a little something, right? I think you can only teach, I can only get you so fast as I train you.
Right.
But for you to be the special or kind of to break through, you're still going to need your own special something, right? And I think that's the same thing here. You can teach these guys, they can get to a certain level if you have some of those master teachers. But at some point, if you want somebody to break through and really see them, they're going to need their own little special thing to okay, they got it.
Right. Do you go back and watch yourself or listen to yourself if it's recorded very often? I mean, other than the special?
It's hard. I used to enjoy it a lot. Like I said, I was a very cocky kid. I realized something that was different. Watching myself as a kid in sports was fun. Basketball, football, track, because I'm competing against other people, but I realized why I enjoyed it so much. I'm hiding behind a facade, right? I have a team jersey on, right? Or I have a football helmet on, so I'm behind the helmet and I'm behind so there's all these other things in play.
It's kind of abstracted in a way?
Right, because, I'm playing for Gatesville, my high school, or I'm playing for Kansas State, right? I have on my jersey. So, yeah, sure, it's on me, but I also have teammates. Right, I can push off some of the blame, some of the energy. All the focus isn't on me. Oh, that is not the case, right? That is not the case when you're on stage.
Just wear your helmet.
Right. So when it comes to watching myself, early days I could do it because I was really hard on the critiques and you know, it was just kind of easy to see where I was getting along. I'd probably say 5-6 years in, I've really stopped watching. I'll listen to the audio, but I really stopped watching myself. So watching the special was really hard. The last 2 weeks watching the special, just because I realized something. Johnny Depp a few years ago used to talk about never watching his movies, and I thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Right. Well, right.
Yeah.
And he goes, his reasoning was, if I watch it and I see something I don't like, I'm going to change it because that's who I am as a person. Like that's what happens. It's just human instinct. He goes, but obviously what I'm doing, people already like. So if they already like what they're saying, I probably shouldn't watch it and judge it because I'll change it. And I feel the same way, especially after watching it now. As soon as I started watching, I was just judging every movement, every hand movement, every eye blink. Like when you're looking at yourself in 6K, it's crystal clear. You see everything. I'm like, why did I move my hand like that? Why did I do this? And I'm like, oh my God, like people, if it's you, you're extremely nitpicky for yourself. And I'm not used to seeing what is almost bare, right? Like there's no jersey, there's no helmet. It's just a microphone.
Right.
And a nice suit.
It was a very nice suit. Which, by the way, that suit is a whole other ordeal. We ordered that thing 5 weeks before the show. It was supposed to be there in like a week and a half. Now it's 2 days, 3 days before the show. It's still not there. So finally, I called the place. They don't answer. You have to go through all these email chains. They're like, well, it's extra 100 and something to overnight it. I was like, yeah, it needs to be here by Wednesday. They're like, oh, well, that's not going to happen. I was like, lady, I ordered this thing 5-6 weeks ago. I have a show tomorrow. This thing needs to be here. So they're like, we will overnight it for you from Florida. The woman, Angelica, that I had helping me out, gets off of work early, goes to my house to wait for the mailman. And the mailman drops the slip as if no one was there. And she had just missed him. So now I'm at the hotel on the bridge, already nervous, holding my backup suit that I'd brought with me. And she sends me a picture saying, hey, the mailman has already passed by. So now she drives around the neighborhood, finds 3 different mailmen, finally figure out which one is mine. And she's like, listen, she had my advertising card from that night. She goes, this is the guy. This is the slip from his house. You have his suit. We need his suit. And she was like, well, you know, he can come pick it up tomorrow. And she literally goes, look at the date on the card. Look at my panic. I need the suit. And she was like, oh my God, honey. She goes, thankfully, the woman was just so nice to her, started digging through the mail, went through, found my stuff. So literally, I pulled it out of the package at the hotel room, and then just brought it. So we hadn't worn it, we hadn't color tested it, anything. We had just put it on before the show. God. It was a rough lead up to the show. You talk about nervous? I was nervous about the show. I was nervous the suit wasn't there until 4:30 that afternoon for what, a 7:30, 8 o'clock show.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But was that run? You said you have your own production company.
Yeah, I started my own company last year.
And so presumably the show was put on through that.
Exactly.
Right? But was there ever a part of you that thought, well, maybe I should just hire someone else to get, have someone else take care of all these things so I don't have to be so stressed out?
I thought to myself, like every idiot, it won't be that hard, right? I'll start a production company. I'll go find some investors. I'll pull together the production team, blah, blah. It'll be easy. It's not easy, people. No matter what. I don't care if it's a crew of 6 people. It's never easy, all right? Grant Cardone, 10x everything. It's 10 times harder, and it's going to take 10 times longer than... I thought I was going to shoot the show in September. That lets you know how far back, like last September is when we thought we'd shoot the show. So once again, that took an extra 6 months.
Yes,
took us an extra half year to actually get the show shot. The only goal and the one thing I will say is, thank goodness we did a good job on this one. And my hope is that I, at least when it comes to comedy specials, never have to do that again. Right? I would much rather go on the road and just tell jokes from now on and have a whole team around. And luckily, I think, we did a good enough job that when we sell this one, that'll be the case, that, from now on, other people will be doing all of this. Though we are in the works with the same director and one of the opening acts, in the midst of putting together a full-length feature film, and we're having a meeting on that next week.
Wow.
I would then produce that, and then I think I'll probably end up taking my producer hat off after that.
Right.
Like one comedy special, one feature film is fantastic, and then I'll let Hollywood get back to doing what they actually do, and then I'll just be in the stuff.
Right. Going back to the idea of watching yourself or not watching yourself, I feel like it's really, and your reference of Johnny Depp, I feel like it's really difficult sometimes to know which criticisms to take on and take seriously and which ones not to.
Yes.
And I've heard both reasonings from both sides. One saying that, as Johnny Depp would say, and another saying that you have to take on all criticism. And I've definitely seen people who reject criticism or ignore it because they believe that it's going to taint, the purity of their originality.
Right.
But I've seen people think that way, but in fact, it's like, no, you should actually listen to what these people are saying. How do you know when to follow the criticism and respond to it, and either other people's or your own, and how do you know when to say, no, I'm going to leave this alone because I think it's part of what's making me unique?
That's one thing I'm very, I want to say connected or cerebral or like really have paid attention probably since 2005 when the news feed, 2006 when the news feed started on Facebook. And Brandon and I were living together at the time back in Kansas, and I'll never forget that morning. I said, "This is the end for people in social media as we know it." He was like, "What?" This is 2006. Like literally, people. Of course, back then, people. I sound crazy, right? Kind of like the conspiracy theories we were talking about earlier, right? But it was because Don Amos later that year ends up getting in trouble for calling the Rutgers girls nappy-headed hoes, and gets, right, he was making has $500 million contract or whatever on Sirius, gets taken from, like all this crazy stuff starts happening that year, right? I knew that social media was going to kind of take on this beast-like thing. We never knew it would be this big of a thing, but now it's pretty ridiculous. And what I've learned over the years, and I've tried to study, is people's behaviors towards social media and how they fucked up, right? Because you watch baseball players, you watch basketball players, you watch our president, you watch everyone, and every week someone has to apologize or is getting fired from something, right? And it's like, okay, so if you paid enough attention and watched this stuff for 13 years straight, figure a little bit of it out. And for me, it was, one, you can't listen and please everybody. It's never going to happen. Right. And I think a lot of people get caught up in those criticisms and do just that. You're great. You're fantastic. 50 Cent is a prime example of this. The dude's doing great with his shows. His music career was great, right? He sold his bottle, right? He sold Glacier the Water, right? Everything was fantastic in life. So why is he always commenting on every negative little thing on Instagram or Twitter? I was like, wait, dude, don't you know that you're always going to get criticism because you're 50 Cent and people know who you are? Yeah. No matter what. Even Mother Teresa had criticism. All right? And I'm good friends with a psychiatrist, and she told me this. She said, Preston, always remember that no matter who you are on the planet Earth, 20% of people will never like you. No matter how funny you are, no matter how good looking you, they will just not like you. So you're never going to get everyone to like you. So that's one thing, to understand that just be you. That's all you can do. And then two, find your circle, the people you really trust. So for me, I have I have about 5 people that I keep as my true inner circle, people that I knew before anything ever happened, all right, before that are either nice producers or big comics or whatnot, but that no one knew who the hell I was from obscurity, that we've been friends for anywhere from 7 years up to 12, 15 years out here. Those 4 or 5 people are the only people I listen to. They can give me criticisms. I listen because I know they had an eye for it. They've put on some of the biggest shows you've ever seen, from Golden Girls to Cheers to Cosby Show on TV. So it's like, when those type of people tell you and give you criticism, I listen to them, right? I don't listen to the dude that's been performing for 8 months and, he just got into the belly room at the Comedy Store and he really thinks that if I move this joke here, it'll be fantastic. So, but it is, and some people take every criticism personally. Some people will see something online and they take and I'm like, some of it is constructive. I'm not one to like read comments, do all that stuff, but being an athlete my whole life, some criticism is good. Now, finding it, like, I'm not going to go through and try to read every comment or every email someone ever sends and just read all that negative stuff. That's horrible for you. Yeah. But, if you can read something to where maybe 4 or 5 different people have said just this little thing about something, maybe then it's okay to go check out and see, okay, now there's 5, 6, 7, 8 people that are kind of brushing on the same thing.
Right.
Maybe I can work on that. Now I'm going to go talk with my team of 4 or 5 people that I know and say, hey, is this something that you guys see too?
Right.
Fantastic. Now let's go work on it. But other than that, I'm not about to let a lot of that energy hit you, because there's going to be negative people. And as you keep leveling up, or as I do another show or another movie, right, or get on they're just going to all come out of the closets and woodworks, right? Hey, we don't like how your eye moves. You know, hey, I wish he cut his hair. Oh, his hair, all right? Everyone's going to have a problem with something. Oh.
And I feel like if you dedicate too much time to looking at this stuff, it's bad.
It's going to take away from you.
It's bad energy too,
Yeah.
because you're just constantly working on yourself when you could actually work on what you're
Yes.
supposed to be working on.
And there's only so much time in the day. It's like you don't want to dedicate or waste time to this stuff.
That's
You know.
Yeah.
my mother, and this has been a staple for the last 8 years in my family. I have a big country Southern family. Talk to all my 4 brothers, both of my grandmothers. Everyone calls, everyone talks to everyone. Everyone used to call and talk to me all the time because I'm an easy punching bag. Preston likes to listen to everything. I'm easy to vent. I'm a half a light year away from everyone, so right, they can just say what they want, and he's never going to repeat it to anyone because he's not here.
Great.
And for the last 8 years, it's slowly trickled off, and hardly anyone calls me anymore. Because as I've gotten more and more spiritual and more connected energy-wise with my day-to-day and myself, they realize that I don't listen anymore. If you call me and you start talking negative about the day, or about having to go to the grocery store, or having to do laundry, or such and such said this, I tune out, or I get off the phone as fast as humanly possible. I don't have time to take on everybody's energy. Everybody has problems during the day. Everyone has to do laundry, right? Everyone got stuck behind someone slow in traffic today. Everyone has to go to the store and fight for parking. I don't need to know your side of the story, right? So I try my best not to take on other people's energy, especially negative energy that doesn't matter. I tell people all these things can be defeated that you hate in your day as long as you get up early. Right? If you got up early at 4:30 or 5 o'clock and worked out and went and hit the grocery store at 6, 7, 8 when it opens up and got home before all the traffic started, you could have been doing laundry and done with your day by 11:30, 12 o'clock. All right? No one told you had to get up at 8 or 9 o'clock and then wait until traffic started to start your day. No, like that was your choice.
Right.
Right? And when you say that to people, people start going, oh, God, I hate this guy.
He's right.
They do.
Right?
Or they tune out and they're like,
Well, because that
Yeah,
takes
anyway.
effort. That takes effort, right? Me getting up a few more hours earlier takes effort. Now, people will complain to you, right? And they'll give you all that negative energy. But the moment you give them the actual solution, it sounds like you just could start your day 2 hours earlier, probably knock out most of those problems you're having.
But so this kind of shift in thinking is something that happened a bit more recently for you, you said, in the last year or so?
I was a weird kid. I was always like this. I was like at 10 years old, like if my mom told me to clean my room, like I would clean my room, but then I would go get silk sheets out. It sounds so ridiculous, and I'd light a cinnamon candle. Right? And
Cinnamon candle.
I was a weird 10-year-old. And then I would put on like orchestra or like classic music, and then I would just lay in my bed and meditate at 10. Like, I don't know where it came from. I don't know why I did these things, but if she made me clean my room, now my space was clean, I would do that every time. And I picked that back up. I always told myself when I got older, part of my journey in life was I wanted to spend 1 year in what I called ninja training. Like I wanted to spend 1 year like just working out like a maniac and like being super agile and fit. But I was like, I wanted to spend another year just on spirituality training, chakra training, learning stones, energy. And I was
Just
fortunate.
cinnamon.
Exactly. So 2015, September 2015, up there in the Bay Area. My days are pretty fast as far as working at the company. I picked up a book called Tori Hartman's Chakra Toolkit. It's a year-long journey, 7 weeks in each chakra, and you're learning about yourself. You're digging through all these old fables and stories, and you learn a lot about yourself when you're studying yourself for a full year, 5 days a week. And it really broke down why you think the way you think, where you learn a lot of your mannerisms from growing up, and how you can kind of break yourself free of all these things that kind of the world has you trapped in and around. So that was a huge year, because it's kind of to say that as a kid, once again, right, kind of putting these plans out there and then actually putting them into fruition. I got to truly spend my year working on spiritual stuff. And, you know, for the last 2.5, 3 years now, it's really changed the way I view things, changed the way I kind of hold my own energy, changed the way I interact with other people.
Right.
Yeah, it's been its own journey in itself, trying to we all have our, whether you grew up in a suburban area or whether you grew up in a different country or, coming from 3,000, 4,000 people in Texas, you said, how do you make that transition to Los Angeles? It's a huge transition. I grew up in a pasture with cows and fishing every day and hunting, and now you're here where there's nowhere to graze anywhere, all right? And you're not driving anywhere. You're not. So trying to find my own space and own understanding has really helped me towards that space, and then kind of really trying to practice that on a daily basis, which is hard in a city like this. I think has been part of the journey that helped me even get to being able to show and entertainment where I am now. You guys being out here in entertainment, you have to have patience. Holy cow, right? You might go into 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 auditions before you actually hit one out of the park and actually get a call back. And then it might be another 15 auditions before you actually get on a show, right? And people come out here, oh man, I've been out here a year, 2 years, 4 years, 5. I was like, great. You do know it's going to take like 7 or 8, right? Like people have to know you. People have to get to know you.
Right.
So yeah, I think part of that journey with the spiritual side helped me these last few years navigate kind of a lot of the noise you get in LA.
And that started with a book that you read?
A book.
That kind of prescribes or gives you tasks or things to do on a scheduled basis, and you kind of follow through that?
Yeah, it's 52 fables. So right, one fable for each week, and then it's a 5-day journey throughout the day. So Monday through Friday, you have different tasks each day to do. And it makes you question pretty much everything about your life, starting from the very beginning, your root chakra, right, all the way up through your body. And it makes you more aware of yourself. It makes you more aware of your surroundings. And it totally gets you out of your head of what Michael Singer, if you've anybody read The Untethered Soul, the storyteller, right, the part of your head that doesn't shut up. So it really teaches you to understand that a lot of people can't differentiate themselves, right, from that storyteller. And it's like understanding you do know that thing's crazy, right? Like you're aware that it's talking, so that should let you know that you're not that. Right, and I always, one of the things that helped me, Michael Singer says, take that voice out of your head and then sit it next to you and then listen to it for like 10 minutes. Now, if you had a friend that sat next to you and said half of the stupid shit that goes on in your head for the last 10 minutes, how much of it would you actually listen to? He goes, probably hardly none of it, right? Because they gave a bunch of horrible advice. It's like, great, so why do so many people actually listen to that thing? And it's like, it's true. It was like, if you had a friend that gave you horrible advice, you probably wouldn't be friends with them much longer, right? Or
you would get up and leave after the first few minutes.
Or you wouldn't hang out with them anymore, right? And it was like, so learning that type of experience, and for a lot of people, especially in entertainment, a lot of it is self-doubt, right? Hey, am I good enough to be on this? Hey, should I be out here doing this? It was a huge breakthrough, I think, for me. As far as trusting what I know and trusting myself and kind of gaining my own confidence back that I had when I was a kid, that kind of got, I would say, destroyed toward to pieces when I first got here. Used to success, used to being really great, used to being really good at everything, then getting out here and having to navigate business and entertainment and trying to figure out, all right, how do you get big? How do you meet people? How do you, had none of that, you know, and then you start doubting yourself and doubting yourself and doubting yourself. So I think running into that spirituality and understanding your own energy and your own power helped me kind of come back out of that cocoon and get back to my confidence side again. And
you found the book kind of just by chance, or is this something that you recognized that you needed to, do something to get over a hurdle?
Well, it's interesting. Like I said, at that point, I'd probably been searching for 10, 11 years. Like I said, I'd mentioned it back in the Kansas days, 05, 06, as something I wanted to do. A girl that I was dating at the time came home with it. We had talked about it over the years. And she just goes, hey, I ran into this today at the store. She was like, I think you would like it. And I picked it up, and literally that next Monday, boom, I was off to the races for a year. She didn't even do it herself. I think she made it like 4 months through, and then she was like done. But, I was hooked once I got to this thing, because just within the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was like, you learn so much about yourself. You really learn how often people self-sabotage or blame themselves for stuff that they probably shouldn't. A lot of stuff is innate. A lot of stuff is built in you from your childhood, from your family, from your past. You had no control over. So how do you go back and rewire yourself from when you were 2, 3, 4 years old, these things that were taught and passed down to you that you don't know that you use today? Right. Like a lot of people don't think like that, but you're hardwired from what you learned in those first few years. So unless you can understand how to unwire and break those cords, you're really bound by a lot of that stuff. So really understanding and kind of letting go and realizing, no, you can do as much as you want, you get as big as you want, but it's up to you to allow yourself to do that. Needless to say, I've been expanding for the last 2.5, 3 years, it seems.
I mean, it sounds like such a risky process. I think many would perceive it as being a very risky process to go through. When you're telling your story about going from Texas to Los Angeles and how it was, your confidence went down for a bit, my guess also would be that, as an athlete, you are judged based on performance, and it's much more quantifiable, like your numbers, right? Mm-hmm. Like you won or you lost. That's pretty clear. But for the kind of entertainment industry and what you do, it's maybe there's more gray area, and in addition, the criticisms probably at times feel like it's a personal attack to you as a human being, and not just that I'm not fast enough or whatever it is, right?
Right.
Even though obviously people identify with these skill sets very closely, but it still maybe is different in that if you get rejected, it's a rejection of everything about you. Right?
Yes, that's exactly the difference. All right, if you're judging me on my wins or losses or whatever, well, great, cool, I still played. It was fine, it's fantastic. But when you flip it to this entertainment comedy, now you're attacking me, right? Now it's me personally, it's almost like when you write something, maybe poetry or something like that. Like that's your work, something you created. So now if someone reads it and, hits on it or, oh man, this is horrible, that's going to affect you or hurt you a lot more, right? And like you said, there's no way to measure. There's no way to quantify, right? Yeah. My life was very easy to quantify for 17, 18, 23 years. Right, and then you get out here, and there's no way to measure where I am on the totem pole telling jokes. There's no way to measure. You can count success as, I'm on a TV show, or someone gave me a special, but that could just be because you got great contacts. You can still be horrible at what you do. Right. So there's no way for me, over this past decade to say, oh my God, okay, I hit this peak now, I'm good. And so I think that's where that spirituality and the kind of understanding stuff panned out for me, because it's okay. I don't need to figure out where I am on that totem pole. All right. For some people, I'm in that 80% and I'm up here. Mm-hmm. For some people, I'll never be up there because they don't like my style. Mm-hmm. It'll never matter. And kind of getting back to that and understanding that it's okay, both sides. Some people will like it, some people will hate it, is a very hard place to get to. For a lot of it's a very hard place to get to. We see entertainers all the time and business people that have committed suicide here in the last couple of years, right? And everyone thinks, well, they're on TV and they're famous and they have all the, I was like, none of that stuff matters. I was like, they've gotten into those positions. That doesn't mean that they're suddenly going to be happy. Sure, in your head, you're thinking that, that's you, Tom. In your head, if you were Anthony Bourdain, you'd be excited doing all of these things, right? But people forget they go through the same turmoils and right, the same storytellers and things that you do as a person in accounting or a person working at home on a farm or on the tractor, right? Nothing's different, except now there's millions of people watching me. Yeah. Right? And so now, if people understood that pressure is a lot different. I used to make fun of LA. Oh my God, look at who was it? Back in the day it was Tracy Morgan, and then I think Jennifer Aniston and Julia Roberts, right? They were all going into the hospital for exhaustion back in like 05, 04. Like we used to make fun of so bad. Oh my God, they're exhausted. Right. Oh, they've been flying. Oh, it's that hard. Yeah, it is. Now that I've been out here, people don't understand. Yeah. Like, do you know what it's like? Some of these people's schedules might be 18, 20-hour days where they're on an interview on the East Coast and they're waking up to do a show, then they're doing a morning radio show here, then they're filming, their TV show, and then they're doing a late-night movie set. And if you've done that for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time where you don't know what city you're in, you don't know what you have to do tomorrow, you don't know your lines for the day, like, you can get so discombobulated in your head. I was on tour for 10 days. By the time I got back to my bed, by the time I got to Portland, I didn't know what city I was in because it was just another hotel room and another bed. I was like, imagine these people that are on the road 5, 6, 7 months at a time. You can get so disoriented, so exhausted to where you just can't stand to see another person or you don't even want to speak a word. Right. I was like, you suddenly have a newfound respect for what people go through in entertainment now that you've had a little taste of it. Right.
Especially if those people have families and whatnot.
Yes.
I don't know how that works.
People, man, it's scary. People don't really realize how much goes into that. Like, okay, your family life is already hard enough, and y'all are already arguing and hating each other, and both you guys are home at 9, or 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and you guys can't pull it together now. Imagine if the husband or the wife is traveling for a show, or you're both in entertainment, and you got kids, and you're trying to be in this spot and that. it's extremely difficult. It's extremely weird to see too, you know, from the perspective of being out here. And then, you know, it's funny, LA I've noticed, doesn't really read a lot of tabloids, right? But you go to the Midwest and the South where I'm from, and good Lord, those things are flying off the shelves. And they really read and think that that's life. Like, they think that these are those people's lives. And I'm like, you do know that that's just stories for you to read, right? You do have to think, like, put it in perspective of your life, and then multiply it times 10 or 50 or 1,000, because now they have to do everything you do and be a parent.
Right.
But they also need to work out and look good because they're on TV, or they're about to come to a concert for 40,000 people, and they, right? And then remember that their kids have homework too, and that maybe when they go backstage, they're trying to go and help their kid with homework, and maybe they don't want to see you backstage after the show, but suddenly I'm an asshole because I said no to you when you came backstage, right? And so people don't realize that these guys almost have no time sometimes in their lives. No time. And, you know, I've been very fortunate to see some of these guys, and I'm like, I don't understand how they do it. Like I said, I got tired after 10 days. I don't want to know what it's going to be like when I'm on the road for a month or two at a time.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty amazing. So I give entertainment actors, people that are really hitting these schedules, a lot of credit, man. It's a lot more difficult than people think it is.
Yeah, I'm sure, because it would also, I think, everyone knows they make a lot of money, so it's kind of a write-off. It's like, oh, they have money.
That's where it is.
Whatever.
That's the facade that they.
If I had that much money,
fixes everything.
Right. But what?
What?
Are you going to say something?
No.
No. Okay. I was going to ask, do you think your background as an athlete has informed how you approach things, or your material even?
I think so. I think that, at least for me, one big takeaway that I've had, I guess, as far as the transition, you were so used to going into an arena and having that build up as an athlete. And I think more or less that's the part I miss, right?
Mm-hmm.
The warming up, the music playing before the warm, like that moment just before the stage starts, and then you're playing. Because when you're in the moment, kind of like the show, I barely even remember the show. I barely remember. I remember everything before that hour, right? When we were setting everything up, right? So, I remember everything after the show. Yeah. But the show itself, I barely remember being on stage because you're in that sports zone. It's the same zone. Right. It's like I remember a lot of the games. I remember playing them. I don't remember. I can't tell you anything about the games. I can tell you what I did before the game, and I can tell you what I did after the game. And so, to me, comedy was almost that same adrenaline rush and that same feeling as playing sports, as, you know, coming out of the tunnel and suddenly 70,000 people are yelling at a football game. It's almost that same feeling. You hear your name called, you're walking on stage, that silence as you get up there, you turn, it's like, boom, attention, eyes on me, time to perform. So I think that's where I was able to kind of cross over as far as an athlete goes and make my transition. A lot of issues, or a lot of people have issues with, and I did too, making that transition from college and sports. And they always talk about athletes having depression, right? You've been a star and an athlete for so long, and now all of a sudden you're 23, and the identity you've had for the last decade's gone. Because now you're just 23 and you just live in LA, right? You're not a football star, you're not a player, no one knows, right? My whole life I walk around, everyone, hey, Preston, they know who you are. Now all of a sudden you're in a town, 4 million people, no one gives a fuck who you are. Depression sets in. Right, and then you got a bunch of your friends that you played with in high school or college. Now you're watching them on TV on Sundays, and like, well, crap, I was just as good as those guys. And you start doubting, why am I not there? Why am I not there? And so that was one of my first pools. And so I think comedy really helped me figure out what took 2.5 or about a year and a half, 2 years almost of being out here before I found comedy, to kind of find my footing of like, what is that adrenaline rush again? What is going to give me that same feeling as being an athlete? Right.
So if you weren't doing comedy, do you think you would have eventually found something else to give you that kind of rush? Because I feel like for some people, it's kind of built within them, and they seem to be drawn toward it.
Right. It's kind of like a first responder, right? Or
sort of.
Right? Like they're always going to be looking for that adrenaline. They're the same people that rock climb in the middle of nowhere, right? And you see them hanging off, like, because they need that energy rush and feeling. So I think, if I didn't have comedy, that, you know, I'd really put that energy into maybe even having a bigger training facility for the kids and like making that side of my world big as far as flying around and training more. I really think it would either be there, or I would have transitioned and kind of done some of the extreme stuff too, whether it been whether it's been skiing or like snowboarding or something, like I would have turned it into something else.
Right.
But luckily, comedy is the outlet for me.
Your special, I was very curious how much of the content.
I wanted to ask that.
What? You don't even know my question.
Oh,
She's like, oh, I know it.
All right, how much of the content is 100% true, and how much of it is, if partially fabricated or entirely fabricated? If you don't want to answer that.
And is there a rule? And is there a rule in general in comedy of like how much stuff you can make up completely?
Right.
You know.
So.
Or is it taboo to talk about? I don't know.
No. So it's funny. There's comics that you guys have known and seen on TV and such for years, and every single word you've ever heard uttered is made up. Then there's some people you've seen, and every word they're talking about is true in some way, shape, or form. Even if it's not true for them, it's true for their friends or family member or something. From me, I'm very observational. So it's from my life or from someone's life near me, meaning, they're telling me some stories, and a lot of people don't even know. They'll just be telling me a story about something that happened to them, and under the table, I'm just typing it out as they talk, because I'm like, because they don't understand how funny it is, the situation they're talking about,
Right.
and how much it relates to other people. And so many people think that situations are specific to them, and I'm like, no. As soon as I hear something that's funny that I know has happened to you and you and you and every other, I just start writing it down because it's gold if it's delivered correctly. I will say, of that show you all saw, oh wow, almost everything in that show is true. The two things that weren't true that would kind of shock you, I think, would be the last ass whooping joke, where the pull out of the car side of the road jumper cables joke.
Right.
That part was fake. The original part was real. He did get pulled over. We did pull over on the side of the road. My mom did whoop his ass. She did not go back and get jumper cables. That was for me. And the only other joke that actually wasn't true, though, and someone, the big producer that was in the audience even told me this. He goes, you got to change that joke. He goes, it's too specific. And he was right. It was too specific. So this is where you asked me about that where you draw the line. So I mentioned that this guy's a billionaire, and then I mentioned he was in Malibu, right? And I mentioned the estate, and he goes, you're really, and then I did the sexual differences part, right? He goes, now you've really narrowed it down. There's only a handful of people that are billionaires in Malibu. He goes, then there's only a handful of those people that actually have the size of estate you mentioned. He goes, and then there's only one that fits the criteria of what you said about sexual differences.
Right.
So he goes, you might have to change. He goes, you didn't say a name, so most people wouldn't figure it out, and I didn't identify certain things like his koi pond and things like that. But I told him, I said, the best part of that story? He was like, what? I was like, everything is true. Except I never got to pee on the kid. Everything about that story was true except the pee part. The call was true. The conversation with the hostesses and the waitresses that night back at work were true. Everything was true. He canceled while I was on my way out there.
That's good.
He canceled.
But you were on your way.
I was on my way out there. And so when I went to work that night, because I left after that and went over there, and the peanut butter and jelly so the peanut butter and jelly thing, the scotch, and like walking through that's all true from the first time I went there. So it's like I mixed the two stories, and the second time we didn't actually get all the way there because he had canceled. But when I went to work that night, I told them what I was going to do, and they were, I can't believe you were doing that. I can't believe you were going to do that. I was like, what? That's $2,000. I'm not going to pee today anyway. Like what? And other than that, everything else in that show is true.
That's crazy.
That's pretty crazy.
Some of those people were even in the audience. Right? Some of the crazy cocaine stories and the Toto toilet stories, he was in the audience.
Really?
Oh yeah. And it's funny too because since that show, I don't think he's done any more blow. I was like, dude, I wasn't hating on your habit. Everyone does their own thing. Some people like to put spoilers on Honda Civics. All right, everyone's different.
More offensive than cocaine.
Right? I say it's more offensive every time. Right?
That's really interesting. Are you ever concerned with telling things that are truths, even if you leave out names that, you're going to
upset someone?
Well, upset, or that it would have repercussions on you in the future, or that they would defriend you or unfriend you or whatever it is.
Ooh, got unfriended today.
I am one of those people that will admit, even if I don't respond, and I typically don't, and I move things. Sometimes I'll read things and things do hit you just because you're human.
Yeah.
And I do try to be nice and kind to as many people as I can. That's just my nature, and I get that from my mom. But I firmly believe, and I always have felt this way with comedy, that if I am on stage and it is funny, then it's off limits. I mean, I don't know how many times you heard me call my dad a bitch on stage, but, I've even called him like, Dad, just so you know, I had free reign calling you a bitch on stage, right? So I'm giving him a heads up, but I know some comics can get affected, I'm Dave. I'm never changing my joke. I'm never taking something out. If it's funny to me, it's funny. And if you can't, get over it, it was just meant to be a joke.
Yeah.
I try to be, I don't want to say I try to be careful on stage, but for instance, my tour ended in Portland. And my first show there in Portland, the place asked me to just stay on the stage and keep going. They asked for an encore. And after I got off stage, the owner pulled me into the back and he goes, we haven't had someone actually do comedy. He goes, we've been doing this show for a year, but we haven't actually had someone come and do comedy since you got here. Because Portland is so PC that he's like, everyone, right? And everyone's so ticky-tacky about saying anything about anyone that he's like, everyone's scared to tell actual jokes and they don't want to offend anybody. He's like, you didn't offend anybody. You made fun of the Jewish jokes that I do, right? The tall Asian jokes that I do. I make fun of black people. I was like, I make fun of everyone, but I try to also make fun of people in a way that's not going to be offensive, right? Making fun of Asian people because they can't put their bags in the overhead isn't really that offensive, right? It's just, everyone's seen it. One, they're shorter people, but two, it's a hard thing to do. And I just, I figured they started Tetris. They should be good at putting blocks together, right? So I used to do a joke back in the day about I never understood why Asian people in America wear Nikes. And people were like, what? I was like, I'm just saying, right? If I was told that half of Africa was making Adidas's, and I wouldn't rock Adidas. Right. I'd switch. And people were like, oh my God. I was like, but it's stuff that's like common sense and known enough that it's like, it's not an attack. And that's always my goal. It's like, you can hit to a level, you can't go old school Eddie Murphy. You can't go raw and delirious, right? You can't go that hardcore anymore where he was hitting the Italians and the gays. Like these days, those things wouldn't fly. But I think you can graze by them enough that as long as you don't make it sound like an attack, you're safe.
Right. I think attention is a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
And you can, I feel like it's pretty transparent too, that if a person's saying something and they have the intention to be funny and they are not intending to be mean, it's pretty clear that that's what they're doing. Even if it's not funny, it's like, all right, well, they tried. But on the other hand, if someone is just being mean, it's pretty clear when they're being mean.
And you can read that in people. I've had those comics that get mad at the stage or get mad at the audience, and so they start attacking the audience, right?
Yeah.
And, well, now nothing's funny because now you're making the audience uncomfortable and people can feel that you're just attacking them. And of course that attack is only coming because you're either lost in your show, right, and you can't pick it back up, or you were having a bad show anyway, right? I had a contentious part of my show where the director's fine with it. I've done the joke for years and I've never had really a problem with it until probably the last 2 months. And one of the other comics that went through the edit with me, he was like, let's kind of get a consensus vote if we're going to take this out. But it's the line after I talk about taking some for the team with fat girls, right? And how I've taken my fair share for the team. Right. And after I mention them being backstops for softball and like unless they can dunk a liver semi-truck, I say, bitch, you're just fat. Now, and they say, but the contentious part, literally, we've spent hours running it over and over. Can I pull the word bitch out and just say, you're just fat?
Really?
Because they were like, we put it in, we put it out. We put it in, we put it out. Then we realized the cut is too weird. And then we were like, should we leave it or cut the whole joke? Does it flow well? I was like, that's one of my favorite jokes and lines. But their issue is, hey, Me Too movement. They really dislike the word bitch. And I was like, to me, go back and watch the last 35, 40 seconds, and then feed the rest of the joke.
Yeah.
I think if you just pull it out of context,
Sure.
it does look bad.
Yeah.
Of course.
But I think if you go with the flow of the joke, like you say, you hear the intent and you hear the lineup with it. I'm not talking to anyone in general whatsoever, other than just using a word as a placeholder, at that time, and that's how I've always. It's a good inflection on how I've always used that joke.
Yeah. I mean, I could see how keeping bitch in would make total sense for it. It gives it more interest.
Well,
does.
people need to chill a little bit. You know?
Well, and that's what I
mean,
told
it's
you.
like everyone is so like hypersensitive on every single word you put next to each other. It's
Yes.
like, hey, it's 2019. Like,
And that's why I put it in the show. That's why I was like, I'm not going to take it out. That's why I talked about it in the show, PC and stuff. And one of the tricks that I do, like making fun of myself and the name. If I'm going to make fun of something else, or if I'm going to skate along the line of something I know is risky, I either make fun of myself first, or I make fun of black people first.
Sure.
Right. So if you notice before that joke, I talked about PC stuff. I talked about. Made fun of Cosby, R. Kelly, Michael Jackson, right? I made fun of our own people first, and I made fun of ourselves and slavery first, so that, hey, you can't get mad at me now when I skate the surface on this fat joke. Right? Because I've already made fun of myself, and I've already made fun of our entire culture and some of our own celebrities. So now when I barely skate across this line over here, like you said, it wasn't malicious. It wasn't something that I've done just to try to piss people off, or it's not a gimmick line. It's just part of that joke.
Yeah, 100%.
But then if you joke about slavery versus fat people, we can't be upset if you're the fat.
And that's my part. It's like, it's one thing if I was skating through the show, right, and I didn't have any of those types of things.
Yeah.
Now I can say, okay, well, if you're going to pick something out, that's offensive. But I was offensive all the way through the show. I mean, listen, if concentrated orange juice isn't offensive to the Jewish people, like that joke, then I was, I skated that line a lot. But even that joke, I love it because it's just a wordplay joke.
Yeah.
And a lot of Jewish people were there that night. I have a lot of Jewish friends there. And they've heard me, that was one of my earliest jokes, actually. I mean, that joke's probably 8 years old. I've never not told it.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a 5-minute set or an hour set. I tell that joke every time, and it has never not worked.
Yeah.
Not one time. And it's such a risky joke, though. I mean, technically you're talking about concentration camps. You're talking about kids going, like, I'm making fun of the Holocaust, and it's never gone wrong.
Yeah.
So I tell people, you can find ways to skate around some of this stuff, and my way is typically self-deprecate first, then whatever that weird topic is, hopefully just hit it slightly enough that no one gets pissed off.
Yeah.
But I feel like as the audience too, to me, when you come to be in the audience of a comedian show, it's kind of implied that you might hear things that you might, not agree with, or that might, kind of like revolt yourself a little bit. But it's like going to Space Mountain. You might throw up, you might not feel comfortable, you might get scared, but there is an agreement before you get in that might happen.
Yes.
That's a big part of it too.
Right?
Like, you're electing to go to this place, or you're electing to listen to this podcast, or to watch. Just don't watch it then.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think your description and your way of thinking for including more potentially offensive material makes total sense to me. And it's I mean, in my view, that's as much as can be asked of any stand-up comic or comedian. And I also agree that there's kind of I think there has to be a hard line between, on the stage it's okay, maybe also with intent. Right? But that's it. Like, there's the only qualifiers. If you start messing with what's allowed on stage and not, then I think it's either all or nothing principle.
Yes.
And it has to be that way because it is an art form at the end of the day, and you just can't start censoring stuff. It just doesn't work. It's a slippery slope.
As you said, one, it's also like you came and you knew what you signed up for. If you're a very conservative person, you don't like cuss words and you don't like dirty jokes, then don't go to fucking Doug Stanhope's show next week. Right? Like, if you know that you don't like certain things, why would you possibly go to a person's show and then sit there and be upset about it?
Right.
It's shocking to me, but you hear, I mean, I told of an instance in my show where that happened to me in Arizona. You hear it on all the big shows. They tell you about some person and these things are real, and you're like, lady, gentlemen, there's 80, 90, 100, a couple hundred other people here. wasn't directed at you. And that's typically what you find, is that something you said hit them personally, and now they're taking it as a personal attack, as if you jumped off stage and then jumped into their face, was like, you know what, I know you really well, sir, and this joke is 100% about you.
Right.
But that lets
That
you
would be
know,
amazing.
that lets you know, one, how insecure people are in their own selves. That you can go to a show with that many people and think that the person up there is talking about you.
Right.
I don't know you, Julie. I don't know anything about you, your kids, I don't know anything. This joke is about someone you'll never met or never will meet.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I told people, and I told Brandon this in the very beginning when I started, I'll never apologize for a joke. If there's no malicious intent, I'm never apologizing. Mark my words, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, whatever else comes out on 5G, I'm never apologizing for a joke, because that's what it is, a joke.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a good joke.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because people don't understand, I've been writing comedy since 07, so 12 years now. I have journals, and I probably have 10, 11, 12 hours worth of material. And great, most of that will never see the stage. So if you pull something out that is going to see the stage, you better believe that shit's sticking in there. Because a lot of these people, I can't just get another joke. A lot of people don't know how long it takes a true professional to even have a year-long or an hour-long special. Someone like a Dave or Jerry, or these guys, it takes anywhere from 8, 9, 10 months to about a year and a half to get new material. And to get that much new material, and to work it, and to craft it. I was like, I know Jerry has journal after journal. Jerry has thousands of pages, but he doesn't have 15 specials, right? But he has, his joke library is probably one of the biggest joke libraries of all time. But he's never on stage constantly like that, just putting out show after show after show, because it takes so much time and energy to curate some of those jokes. You better believe that if I like it, I don't give a damn what you think.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think a lot of comics and a lot of entertainers also have to remember why they got in this and why they're doing it. For me, I do it to make people laugh. I hated my 9 to 5, right? It was a great job up there. It was cool. But I woke up one day and said, if I'm still doing this in 5 years, I'll jump off a bridge. And if I felt like that, I know there's other people that feel like that. So now I take it personally as a comic. If I grab that microphone and I get on stage, somebody has that 9 to 5 and feels that same way. And now they showed up here tonight to get their mind off of that 9 to 5 that I hated so much. It's time for me to put on a show. And those people want to see me give my best performance with my best jokes. So no, I'm not pulling out my zinger that I know is going to make him throw up half his beer because you don't feel good about it tonight or because it hits you personally.
Sure.
I just can't do it.
Yeah. Do you think that, this mic I'm not used to, do you think that comedy should aspire to, do you think it's good enough for an act to just be funny, or does it need to also be more philosophical and provide like insights to different things? Do you know what I mean?
I think you have different people that have different skill sets. Someone like Carlin, you're about to learn for the next hour and a half.
Right.
So much stuff about yourself, about the cerebral, right? You're going to learn a lot about government and politics and how the wool's pulled over your eyes. But he's also going to make you laugh the entire time while making you go,
Right.
wow, that is correct. Then you have somebody like Anthony Jeselnik, who's going to say the most outlandish shit you've ever heard and take it so far out of left field, and you're like, there are two different styles, right? Completely different styles, right? I'm learning something a lot from Carlin. Jeselnik's just saying some really weird shit, but they're both hilarious.
Right.
And it's just a matter of which craft makes more sense for you, because some people do want to take something away from their shows.
Right.
And so for me, I like doing that. I like to give, I like the fact that I told a story. I like the fact that I talked about the lotions and what to say to your kids and things like that. Just weird lessons or giveaways, talking about racism, how my mom raised me, just to kind of give people that insight or kind of, you almost want to make yourself human, right? To kind of connect yourself with the crowd. That's really about it. I go into it with maybe some, for me, that message was hopeful that, hey, you could be a kid from anywhere. That was really the hope that I gave people from there, at least I hope. Mm-hmm. But some people really just are up there telling jokes because they're good at it and they get a nice paycheck and they go on.
Yeah.
But I think, at least I hope, my plan always was to do 3. I have 2 ready. We'll see if we get to a 3. We'll see if we get signed on. And each one builds off of the last one. So there's a lot of stuff that was taken out from Farm to TV. That last second half of the show where all the crazy stories come in, I had to cut like 45 minutes of crazy stories because the show was running too long. It was like I had an hour-and-a-half show, and we only have an hour-and-a-half to take. Plus, no one's watching an hour-and-a-half comedy special. So, I had to cut it down to an hour, but I still have 30, 35 minutes of some of their most crazy stories from out here. And I was like, dude, I can't wait, because once people watch Farm to TV, now I can build off of those stories. People feel like they know you a little bit. Now you're about to learn some real crazy shit. Like, you thought that show was crazy? Wait till you get part 2. So.
How do you keep the material fresh for yourself? Because if you're doing the same bit so over and over, and obviously for the audience, if they've heard it for the first time, it's hilarious because it's new, and it will be funny if they see it again and again. But there's something about that freshness, right?
Right.
But when you're performing, you give the illusion that you're right there with them.
Exactly.
How do you do that? Because
it's kind of like the joke where I was in the lights, then I ducked out of the lights, and I'm stroking off, and I make eye contact with the guy, right? I've done that 1,000 times. Of course, I knew I was going to do it, right? I'm setting it up, right? People are like, oh, was that improv?
Yeah.
Of course not. It looks improv, but I've done it 1,000 times. And that's the trick of the artist, right? Making sure that you make it look like this is the first time you're doing it. For me, I was a huge basketball fan growing up, and Michael Jordan was and still is, right, my guy. And he said something about how he performed, which was, I play hard and I play the way I do every single night, whether I'm at home or away, because there's somebody in the stands seeing me play for the first time. Right? You already know Michael Jordan. You already know he's great. But somebody is in that arena that night that had bought their first time. They bought a ticket and they're seeing Michael Jordan live for the first time. He's putting on a show.
Right.
And he goes, I thought that every single time, whether it was a pickup basketball game in the summer or whether it was an NBA game. And so I try to take that same approach, that even if it's the 6th time I've gotten up that week and I'm doing another 7-minute set for the 6th time that week, great. But there's somebody out here at this new venue that's never seen this 6 minutes before. So I got to give them a 6-minute show that, they haven't seen. And I kind of take pride in that because, once again, you came out tonight, right? Once again, I don't know your whole story, but maybe you had to get a babysitter, right? Maybe you had to make sure someone would watch the kids, right? Maybe you had a long day at work, you had to fire somebody. Whatever the case is, you found your ass in that seat tonight and you want to laugh. So I can't come up there going through the motions just because this is the 6th time I perform something. So that's at least my vantage point. I know some people can't turn it on and off like that, but for me, that's my kind of drive to do it.
I wonder if that probably ties into your athletic background as well. Because if it's time to perform, there's no option. You just do it.
No, exactly it. You literally just turn it on. There's times where I've been quiet pretty much the entire day and just exhausted, and it seems like I'm not going to do anything. Then I grab the mic, jump on stage, and people are like, wow, you're a completely different person. Yeah, it's time to perform. The lights are on.
Right. So, who's your favorite comic currently? It's just a risky question because I know a bit about comedy, but not a whole lot.
I will still say that my current, and he's always been one of my favorite of all time, is still going to be Dave. Chappelle, to me, a lot of people can't just be funny. Right? A lot of people need to jump around. They need to give you a bunch of mannerisms. Right? And by the way, physical comedy's fantastic as well. But for me, I enjoy, like I said, it's an art form, it's a science. I enjoy the wordplay. That's why I really enjoy Jezelnik, because his is all wordplay the whole time. You need to listen to every word or you might miss one of the funniest things you've ever heard. And to me, that's Dave. Even the main joke is always funny, but people forget to listen to what he's mumbling or saying directly after the main joke, or the little muddle that he says as he puts his head down.
Yeah.
And people forget that those little tidbits are so funny too. And Dave is probably the master at them. Like, if you watch his shows and just let the crowd noise die down quickly and listen to whatever he mumbles next half of the time, it's just as funny as what he just said. But most people aren't paying attention to it because they're laughing so hard at what he just said. And I watched myself, but I caught myself sneaking in a lot of those. When I watched it with someone else, a good friend of mine was like, oh my God, that's just that. I was like, yay, I snuck some of that in there. You know, I really try to emulate him. I think in one of his last specials, he mentioned how great he is, right? How he's mastered the craft. And he was like, no, seriously, I just have a fishbowl full of, you know, cutouts and paper clippings, and he just reaches in and grabs one and reads the note and then, you know, creates a joke all the way around it. And I was like, people don't understand, that really is a skill. Like, there's not a lot of people out in the world that can give me a thought, right, or give me a sentence, and I can create, or a word, and I can create an entire joke around it.
Yeah.
So that, to me, just puts him in a different genre. But then putting out 4 specials over 2 years. I mean, I know some of them were shot beforehand and whatnot, but 2 specials in 2 years is really hard to do. And 2 specials in 2 years that are that funny are really hard to do. Prime example, I love Kevin. I love him to death. I think he's done a great job with a lot of his specials. His last special to me wasn't that funny. Huge. It was great, right? London, it was huge. But to me, it didn't carry the same weight as a lot of his specials beforehand. Is it because we know what's coming? Possibly. Right? Is it? But for me, his style has always been different. So I wasn't, you know, I appreciate what he does because, you know, he's a huge success, and I think what he does is fantastic. But to me, I'll be able to watch Dave, and I still watch Dave's first specials from now until 40 years from now, because they're always going to be that funny with his wordplay.
Yeah.
Another big influence for me, not this generation, was Dangerfield, though. A lot of people don't know Dangerfield's work ethic. He was meticulous behind the scenes.
Really?
Carson, when he would go on, you know, people always like, why doesn't he go on Carson more than once a year? And it was because he set up that entire 7 minutes. Like most people, like when he came, from the moment he walks out and does a little bit and then sits on the couch and someone from the crowd says something and he does the crowd work and he goes, I get no respect. He planted that person in the crowd, and they had a timer and they knew exactly when they were supposed to say that.
Really?
Carson had a lineup, and Carson had a list of everything that he was supposed to say or the questions that he was supposed to ask. So Dangerfield, anytime you saw him, was in control of everything from the moment he came into a picture frame until the moment he was out. So everything Carson said, he wrote. Anything the crowd audience said, he wrote. Anything that he had the zingers ready for was already written.
Interesting.
So he goes, do you know how long it takes me to do all that for 7 minutes? Right? It's a lot. So that's why he would only show up once a year on that show. And he was like that about every show. If he said he was coming out and doing a 65-minute show, you best believe at 6:48:59, he was about to put the microphone directly into the stand and walk off. He was that good. So he really pushed my work ethic on how I work behind the scenes, so that by the time you get to the stage, you think I'm just performing.
Right. So what is next for you? You have the 5-year plan. You might be producing a movie, but is there any new different projects or things on the horizon?
Yeah, so the same director is looking at a feature film they were looking to produce, so we're going to get that going next week, and be my opportunity to have the first lead in the feature would be fantastic. And then I'm working with some of the guys that were shooting the behind the scenes there that night, maybe even at the same venue, actually. Looks like we may be putting on a monthly special. I guess the last person I would think had one, Amy Schumer had Amy Schumer Presents on Comedy Central. Gabriel Iglesias had his back in the day that he'd shot out of Phoenix. So we're looking at doing the same idea, using that same venue,
Cool.
And then being able to shoot once a month, bringing in new comics, 4, 5, 6 comics, actually doing 10, 15 minutes each, right, so that people can get some awareness of them, maybe 3 or 4 comics each time, shoot an episode, boom, I'll host the thing, and we'll be out of there. Looks like we're going to shoot maybe 4 or 5 pilots this summer. But then try to make it a monthly thing, so that would be kind of cool, where it's not too regular, but just enough to where we can keep punching out episodes and throwing edits together. And I just think it'd be fun, to host my own comedy show.
Yeah. That sounds really interesting. The venue's pretty cool too.
Right.
I like the venue.
I think the venue is fun. It's like he said, for their camera crew, it'd be easy to set up and do what we do. And though I haven't hosted many shows, I was typically performing, I always wanted to host shows, just because I feed off of other jokes really well.
Right.
I won't watch other comedy. I'm really bad about like I won't watch comedy on TV. I'll watch it live if I'm there, but I try to watch it in the perspective of a fan because if I pay too much attention, I don't want to Carlos Mencia anybody. You know, I'm not trying to. And comics and some comics will tell you that because we're sponges, we can hear so many things and then we can regurgitate things quick because we're so used to. And so I just stay away. I'm really careful, but. We also, you know, I said I have 8, 9, 10 journals and stuff, have arsenals of jokes. So when you're watching someone else perform, it instantly sparks some of your old jokes. Right. And so it'd be great to just come out and hit one-liners all the time and then get you on to your next person or, you know, hit a 2-minute bit and get you on to your next person. I'm like so looking forward to that. Plus, I can also like get a bunch of free suits, you know, right? It's like, hey guys, you know, we're going to be shooting another show. I need another wardrobe.
They're going to sponsor you now?
Yeah,
That's
exactly. My hope is that I can go around to different places and just be like, hey, we need another suit for next month, you know.
So suit and a vino, I mean, that's pretty good sponsors.
You see what I'm saying?
Overnight that shit.
See, that's what
well in advance.
Well, one thing I can be on stage. I can talk about my great skin. I can talk about who I'm wearing.
Look good on camera.
Right? I can talk about who I'm wearing that night.
Then just start thanking people.
Right? Just the weirdest product placement ever. It's just like, why is there a bottle of vino on stage? It's like, don't they put water right there? No.
All right, man. Well, on that note, this was really fantastic, and it was really interesting speaking with you, and we're thankful that you came on the show.
Hey, I want to tell you guys, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Sorry I'm a little under the weather, but I think it worked out. I also want to tell you all thank you for being there and in the audience that night, being a part of my little special piece. I know you guys got to see me cry up there like a sad little man. But it really was a special night, man, and I'm really thankful for all the people that were there in attendance and very thankful for your presence, man.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of the Midnight Charette. We appreciate it, and thanks to our guest, Preston. He's a funny guy and a nice guy and super introspective and interesting, and it was a pleasure. So
well,
thanks
and we
to him.
appreciate that he came despite his terrible allergies, and that's why he had to wear sunglasses. So
he was actually asking for tissue like at least, I don't know, 3 times because it was that bad. But I think it went well nonetheless. We have a hotline. It is 213-222-6950. Ooh, one more time. 213-222-6950. Call it, leave a voicemail. It goes straight to voicemail. So tell us all of your inner secrets, desires, any crimes you've committed. Use a fake name.
Whoa.
What questions do you have? Love concerns. Call us and leave a voicemail, and we'll go over it on the podcast. Ooh.
And it occurred to me that we have a bunch of listeners from other countries. You know, like recently we spoke with listeners from Australia and the Philippines.
And London.
If you don't want to, you know, spend money calling a number that's in the US, you could always use your iPhone and just text iMessage us.
You can text that number as well. Yeah. We have a website. It is midnightcharette.com. Go there. We have all of our previous episodes. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. Leave a review in iTunes. That's a big thing. I know we ask every week, but that really helps, actually.
Well, that really helps. And the truth is that, you know, we don't make any money out of doing the podcast, and we're spending our own money to make the podcast. So really, reviews are helping us to stay ahead of the very tall podcast mountain climbing situation.
Yeah. And thanks again for listening. That's the big thing, and we super appreciate it. So we'll talk to you again either via the hotline or by the Miracle of Podcast or some other weird medium. All right. Talk to you next week or sooner. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.